Hashanah. Should have an Aliyah Mitzvah Shem Topol Nishmas Tzvah Yisrael. And so Fermi gave me the opportunity to speak. And, it's a tremendous opportunity to speak Shem to the yeshiva, and especially something about the parsha, and also something that's significant to the day of the Yortzeit of my father. I saw written in copied down some things that Rav Zadel Epstein, who used to be the Mishkiach in the Yeshiva's Torah Or. He had given a series of seminars to young married men. And he spoke there about the idea that we see two mitzvahs that last for a year's time. Shemitah, we're in the middle of the Shemitah year now, lasts the whole year. And another mitzvah of Chassidus Sameach Esakala. Chassid at the time of the more Al Pi Din Torah, he's parted from going into the army, he has a new wife to take care of, and to establish a relationship properly, he has a whole year to establish that relationship on a strong and successful basis. Two mitzvahs that last the whole year. The other day I was thinking, looking back over the past year of the Avelis, I said, there's another mitzvah that lasts a year. For a father and mother, the person's supposed to be in Avelis for a whole year. It takes a whole year to absorb the loss and to appreciate the situation that the parent is going through. And it's not something which can just be taken care of during the course of a few days or a month, just like Shemitah. Shemitah is one of the reasons of Shemitah is explained to instill in the Jewish people emunah, faith in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, trust in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that even though we're not going to till the land, we're not going to take care of what we have to do according to natural means of agriculture, nevertheless, the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us a blessing, a bracha, that we'll be able to subsist, we'll have our sustenance, we'll have our parnasa, our nourishment from the land, in spite of the fact that we're not doing anything as we do on the regular course of a year. Same thing is by Shabbos. We take a day off from the week, even though you might say that, look, you have to work on Shabbos, it's a good day for business, most people off. Nevertheless, we have emunah and trust in Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's going to give us our parnasa, he's going to give us our livelihood, in spite of the fact that we're not working on a day which is usually work. The Chavetz Chaim brings an analogy. What's it like if a person's going to work on Shabbos? Because he says the basic premise is we realize and understand, according to what we've been taught, that the amount of livelihood, parnasa, that a person's going to get, his income is given over and decreed from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. Right? So if it's decreed already, a person has to simply do his minimal efforts and he'll receive what's decreed for him. So it's like a person has a certain pot of water, right? It has a spigot on it, right? So a person, a keg of water, and he turns the spigot and he takes it out. Person wants to work on Shabbos, it's like putting another spigot on the other side of the pot. So you think you're getting more, but really just what's in the pot is finite, and you're just taking out quicker than what you would normally have had. But it's not, you're not going to gain anything by working the extra day of Shabbos. Likewise by Shemitah, you might think it naturally means we have to work the land, but Torah says no. Have trust in the Kadosh Baruch Hu and believe, and take a whole year to think about this, and you'll see that you'll have the blessing from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you'll have what you need in spite of that. And you'll even have a bracha. You have more than what you thought you would ever possibly want and would gain even by your own actions. Likewise, a chassid and a kala, newlyweds, takes time to establish that relationship. You can't really just do it in a day or two or a month's time. You want to spend time, something which is important, you spend time a whole year to establish that relationship. Likewise, by an Avelis, Rabbi Yerucham, the Mishkiach Amir, and he wrote a miktav to one of his students, a bacher from Yeshiva, who had lost his father. And he said at the very beginning, he explains that the basis of Avelis is noise oil b'chavera. What does that mean? That you feel for the other person, right? And he explains to Rabbi Yerucham that really, even though it looks like we're in different places, if we understand that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is Echad, right? Then there's no real difference between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. There's no difference between Chaim and Mace. Everything is all Echad. Everything is within the realm of Kadosh Baruch Hu's unity. So he explains, it's simply like you have a prose door, as Chazal in Pirkei Avos explained to us. You have a hallway which leads to a ballroom, right? They're both in the same building. They're different parts of the same building. You come into here to the shul here, you have the prose door, you have the corridor coming in from the steps coming up, you have this floor, that floor. So what you do in this floor is a little bit different than what you do in the other top floor. When you walk down the steps, it's not how you act when you're in the base medrash or in here when you're going to be davening, right? But it's all part of the same shul. It's all part of the same binyan. The whole building is one, right? So it's just that you're in different places doing different things. But there's really no difference between the things except that you happen to be doing different things, and the place that you are in gives you different obligations and different benefits to what you're supposed to be doing. So he explained Rabbi Yerucham to the Bachar who had lost his father that your father's in a different situation right now, and during the first year especially, there are certain things which have to be judgments which take place, and because of these judgments that take place, the son can do for the father, right, what no other person can do through his Torah and mitzvahs and kind acts, and therefore he's helped the father. And that's what they try to do. You try and feel for the father, feel for the parent, and through this you try and benefit the father. But you're all together. It just happens to be the father's in this different situation than he was previously in this life in Olam Hazeh. The Parsha speaks about the Meraglim, primarily. If you look at most of the Parsha speak about the Meraglim. That Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, you want to send spies there to Israel? I'll let you. It's your decision. Right? I'm not saying you have to, because I already told you what the land is. The land is good. Eretz Israel is Tova. It's very good. There's nothing to be concerned about. Chazal and Medrash explain according to an analogy. It's like a king had a son, a prince, and he found a shidduch. He found a nice woman to marry his son, had all the possible things that the son could possibly want, looks, beauty, good midos, right? And Melech said to the son, look, I found somebody for you. Right? The son said to the father, the father said, look, I want to see her. Reasonable request. Right? Chazal say, the king, when he heard this, he had lost all his interest in the shidduch, in the marriage. Why? Because he sensed that the son, by asking to see the proposed wife, he didn't trust the father. How can he not trust the father? Many years ago, when I first came to Eretz Israel, I was a bacher, and just starting to learn here in Yeshiva in Eretz Israel, guiding you, Rebbeim, guiding you. So someone gave me a very, very worthwhile tip. For example, it says, let's say you know somebody. He's wiser than you. He knows a lot more than you. And he's more experienced than you. He's older than you. And he also has your best interest in mind. Right? And he suggests something to you. Is there a reason why you wouldn't believe him? What could be wrong? He knows more than you. He's more experienced than you. He's older than you. And he has your best interest in mind. Right? So if he tells you to do something, why would you think that you have to doubt his word? Similarly, Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, if Klal Yisrael has certain doubts about Eretz Yisrael, Kadosh Baruch Hu said that the land is holy, the land is hope, obviously it's good. Whatever Hashem says is emes, is true. So they really don't have to check it out, but they want to check it out. Okay, they want to check it out. So what can you do? If you want to send them, you're doing it, and it's going to be on your responsibility. You have to take responsibility for sending them. So the spies were sent into Eretz Israel. We saw what happened, and because of what happened occurred, the Klal Yisrael was. The Meraglim came back and spoke the Lashon Hara against Eretz Israel. They misinterpreted what they saw there. And they came back with a bad report about Eretz Israel. The Jews there believed them, and so therefore, Kadosh Baruch said, "Okay." Just like the king said to his son, "You don't believe me? I have no interest in this." So the king said in the mashal, the analogy that Chazal say, okay, you know what, you're gonna see her, but you're not gonna marry her. You're gonna see her, know that I'm telling you the truth, right? That she's exactly what I said, right? And unfortunately, you're not gonna have her. So Akadosh Baruch Hu made a gezerah that all those people in the midbar that were between 20 and 60 years old, they had to pass on, that generation passed on, and they weren't allowed to come into Eretz Yisrael until the new generation came over and took over from them. Rabbi Rucham, in the same letter to the Bachar, he says that that's the whole point of one generation going from one generation to another. We know that the previous generations, they have certain agendas, certain goals that they want to do for the benefit of Klal Yisrael, for the benefit of the world. And when that generation passes on, or that person from that previous generation passes on, it's part of our duty to try and see what did they accomplish, what they were successful with, and the things that they didn't accomplish. Not that they were not necessarily successful, but they wanted to do certain things, but it's not every time you want to do something can you be successful to actually do it. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu is Mistarv Machshavah Tova L'Maisa. Person has a Jew especially has a good thought, he wants to do a good deed, but not always can he fulfill it. Sometimes he doesn't have the time, he doesn't have the resources, he just can't fulfill it. So nevertheless, even though he can't fulfill it in action, Kadosh Baruch Hu gives him the benefit of actually doing it, even though he didn't actually fulfill it. So part of the Rabbi Yehuda was explaining to this student of his that had lost his father, part of our job is look back and see what did the previous generation, or that person from the previous generation who's now passed on, what did they try, what did they want to accomplish, right? And take that upon yourself and see what we can do to continue on in their ways. Follow their ways, and therefore you'll be a continuation of what this person wanted to do and wanted to accomplish, even though the person didn't accomplish it, or maybe accomplished it only halfway. So you take over. Simply like we see, Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed to go into Eretz Yisrael, okay? For reasons not because of the Meraglim, for his own reasons that Hashem said he was decreed that Moshe Rabbeinu would not go into Eretz Yisrael. He had to give it over to his Talmud Yehoshua. His Talmud Yeshua took over and led Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael. We try and analyze the Meraglim. So the Mesil Shesharim, the Ramchal, in the Sefer Mesil Shesharim, in the 11th parak, brings down, that's the largest chapter in Mesil Shesharim, the chapter on Nikiyas. Goes through many, many different things and a lot of halachas, which means very basic things we should try and be literally clean from, free from, right? Starting speaking Lashon Hara, stealing, Chilul Shabbos, all kinds of different things. So Shesharim explains very basic things which we should try and be careful about. And one of the examples is he speaks by Midas Ross, Midah Raw, something which is a bad personality trait which is not to our benefit. Right? In general, there are three basic personality traits which are not to our benefit if used incorrectly. Every personality trait that we have, if used in the right and proper way, right, is beneficial. Just like spices, right? You have salt, you have pepper, right? Cinnamon, right? So if used in the right way, you can make a very delicious dish, right? But if you use too much salt, right, you ruin the dish. Even if you use sugar, which is sweet, put too much sugar in something, you lose its time. It has to be balanced, right? So even as Chazal say, there are three major midos which are basically detrimental. That's kina taiva v'kavod, and as Chazal say in the Mishnah Avos, kina taiva v'kavod, motzi adam alamiz ha'olah. The kina, which is jealousy, envy, taiva, which is lust, pleasure seeking, and you have kavod, which is honor. People want prestige, right? All these things are very basic motivating factors in the personality of a person, that if we didn't have these things, people would not really function very well in this world. A baby, for example, if he didn't feel hungry, right, he wouldn't cry when he's hungry, and the mother would forget about him, and within a matter of hours, the child would be in a situation of satana, right? So a person has to feel hungry, right? A person has to want to feel a self respect and has pride. He wants to accomplish something, he wants to feel that he's part of a group accomplishing something. People look at him and wants to feel that he's something that people appreciate and he's accomplishing something which people understand the significance of. Right? Jealousy likewise. He has this, so I want to get it too. So therefore, even if just get a person out of bed, right? Just to get a person out of bed, he's because he's motivated for jealousy. So at least he's out of bed and he's off to work, right? So we'll go to his job and he'll fulfill his job, and society continues. Without these, things would slow down and stop. You wouldn't be motivated. I was once told by a principal of one of the schools, Jewish schools here in Yerushalayim, that one of the most difficult children to deal with are those who are not motivated. Right? He could be a troublemaker, that's not so hard. They'll work around him if he's a troublemaker. But you see, he's motivated to do something, you just have to channel him right. But if he's not motivated, it's very hard to get a handle on him and to direct him, because he's somebody who doesn't want to go anywhere, he doesn't want to do anything. So if a person's in motivation, so just direct him in the right direction, he will accomplish eventually. But if there's no motivation, how do you motivate a person who's not motivated? Very difficult job. Right? So the Meraglim, they had motivations. And because of their motivations, they were successful people. Right? The beginning of the parsha says these were people who were outstanding individuals. Moshe Rabbeinu did not pick, right, evil people and unsuccessful people to be the spies to go into Eretz Yisrael. He picked people who were able to and did accomplish things previously, and to take on the responsibility of taking this tremendous thing. Imagine going into the Eretz Canaan, and a place you've never been before, and spying out the land, right? There's only 12 individuals, right? And you're going into a place for 40 days, 40 nights. It's supposed to journey throughout the whole land at the risk of life. What are you supposed to do? You had to obviously be qualified, and they were qualified. But yet, as the Mesilas Yesharim says, because they had an idea, they had a certain personal bias, right, for prestige, right, they eventually were unsuccessful. Because as Mesilas Yesharim explained, Al Pi Chazal, that they understood that when Klal Yisrael would come, when Jewish people would come from the Midbar to Eretz Yisrael, their positions would be reduced. They would have a reduction in their position. Now they're in the scene, they were of a high echelon, they were high-ranking people in the strata of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. When they would come to Eretz Yisrael, other people would take over from them. That they could not accept. But we shouldn't think that that's what's so difficult about that. It's a very, very difficult thing. Those Steinberg's Shiva used a Gemara in the Menachos to explain the point of Yeshua ben Prachia. He was Rosh Yeshiva. Yeshiva at the time of Chazal, the Tanoim, the Amoraim. It's a Gemara. And he said about himself, he said that before he had become the Rosh Yeshiva, if someone would suggest to him the idea of becoming Rosh Yeshiva, he would tie that person down and put a line in front of him to eat him up. He would have tied the person down in front of a lion. If someone would suggest he becomes the Rosh Yeshiva, he would have tied a person down who suggested that in front of a lion, to be consumed by a lion. He said after he had taken the Messias, after he became the Nasi, the Rosh Yeshiva, if someone would suggest to him he step down, he would pour boiling water over his head. This is Yeshua ben Prachia. He would pour boiling water over the person's head. And he said, the Gemara goes right, he said, I'll bring you a proof. I'll bring you proof that what I'm saying is true. He said, Shaul HaMelech, right? Shaul HaMelech, this is what it means. He brought his own proof from Shaul HaMelech. It was very difficult for Shaul to accept the situation that David was going to take over from him. Okay? Very, very difficult. To step down is a very difficult thing. You know, until a person actually is in such a situation, we don't know. As the Yeshiva once also said, he said, Shlomo Melech said, Hevel Havolim, I call heaven. You look at the world, everything is vanity of vanities. Hevel is like what comes out of your mouth. And Hevel Hagolim is, it's even further away. This is vapor. He said, look, the world is vapor. He said, only Shlomo Melech could say such a thing like that and be believed. You know why? Because he had everything. He had wealth. He had prestige. He had kingdom. He had everything. A person who has everything and says it's nothing, you can believe him that it's nothing. But a person who says that he doesn't have it, and he says it's nothing, so he's just talking off the top of his head. Right? He's not speaking about anything mamushes. He's not speaking out of reality. Shlomo Melech is talking about reality. From his own experience, he's telling you. Kol Hevel Havolim. So likewise, when Yeshua ben Prachia was explaining that, take a look at my situation. I can't step down. It's impossible for me to step down. Rabbi Yusuf Salanter explained the situation was as follows. This is what the Rosh Hashanah explains further based on this Gemara. That, for example, you take a person who has middle class person and give him wealth and position, right? You ask him after he's been established into the position, you feel any different? He says, well, it's like this and like that, but I'm basically, he'll say, the person's going to claim I'm basically the same person. Right? The truth is not that way. The truth is, the person's changed drastically. There's been a drastic change in the person, but since the person is biased because of his desire for honor, right, he doesn't sense it. The danger of gaiva, right, as what Rashi explained up here, Rabbi Yusuf Salanter, the danger of gaiva is a person doesn't sense it. A person's immune to his own feeling of gaiva. So we don't feel it, we don't realize it. That's how we understand what happened to the Moradim. The Moradim, they understood that the situation would be different when he came into Eretz Yisrael. And that, in what we call a subconscious way, they couldn't accept. They couldn't accept that. So therefore, anything that they saw in Eretz Yisrael, they misinterpreted it. Right? You look at the Rashis, you look at the Sforno, the question wasn't exactly what they saw. They saw what they saw, but their interpretation was biased. That's what we many times have to always question ourselves. Everyone sees more or less the same thing, right? But it's our interpretation of what we see. Obviously, is it glass half full, half empty? That's the obvious thing which we all know about, right? It's much more subtle when you're dealing with things which are not exactly half full or half empty. Something which, what is it exactly, right? Our bias affects ourselves. And this is something which is enlightening in the following way, that if the Torah is telling us what happened to Merari, right, it's certainly on very high levels of accomplishment. Certainly for people that are not on such high levels of accomplishment, we have to be concerned about this so much more ourselves. So everybody wants to be successful in life. Everybody wants that they should, have the things that make their life comfortable, that they'll be able to do the things that are right. These are the basic motivations of people. The Vilna Gaon says in Sefer Mishlema that the person is motivated what he calls the Ratzon HaRishon, which I would say that's like his prime motivating desire, his most subconscious, most unconscious desire. The question is, what is that? Right? Person trying to think about his situation in this life. What are we really after? If we think about what are we doing in this world, right? Which is the beginning of the Sefer Mesilas Yesharim. What's your obligation in this world? So he says clearly, right, to you want to get benefit from the pleasure that the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to give you, primarily in the next world, right? But a person who does the Ratzon Hashem in this world, right, he can have a lot of pleasure, right, in a very basic way, lead a very good life, with a lot of basic enjoyment, simply by doing the Ratzon Hashem. So if this is our basic understanding of what we're supposed to be doing in this life, because again, people may most likely be motivated by kinei taiva v'kavod, right? Those are the basic things that get people moving. right? So how do you temper these things, right? How do you know, right, to use the proper amount of salt and the proper amount of sugar and cinnamon, right? So if you want to just say, well, cinnamon looks red, I want it to be really red, so I'm going to put a couple of handfuls, in this recipe, right? So it'll look very red, but it's going to taste awful, right? So if you study how to use the spices when you're cooking, you'll be successful to make tasty dishes. Likewise, if you study, right, and that's why so often it's very important and so strongly suggested a person sits down with sparring like Mesilas Yesharim, they teach you the basic things about what you have to know about life and teach you how to make the best out of life, right? This is something which is very relevant to us. And we see on the opposite side what happened to the Merayim, right? They brought destruction to themselves, they brought destruction to their whole generation. They didn't come into Eretz Yisrael, right? Eretz Yisrael was left for the next generation to take over from. The person has what the Vilna Gaon calls his Ratzon Risho is vital to try and understand. And the way to do that again is to look into Sifrei Musar, right, and try and understand, right, what a person is all about and what a person's obligations are. Over the past year, so I thought about my father, obviously, person, as I said, just finished the 12 months of surveillance yesterday. This is the Yortzeit, beginning of the second year. So I had the Machshava during this year that when I look back, my parents, they lived in America, and I've been here, Baruch Hashem, almost 35 years or so here in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, learning. And so they would come, especially up until about 5 or 6 years ago, they would come 2, sometimes even 3 times a year. When I look back, more often than not, my father and my mother, they would come and join us here in Eretz Yisrael during Sukkot. To come to Eretz Yisrael, to do mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael is a whole different world than doing them in Chutz La'aretz. Not simply because Chutz La'aretz is different, but you're in the what we call the Palpin Shel Melech. You're in the palace of the king. I was on last night. We finished the more Kesubos. So the last few points that the Gemara in Kesubos mentions that how the Tanoim and Amorim had such a love for Eretz Yisrael. Right? That some would kiss the ground of Eretz Yisrael. Some would roll around in the dirt of Eretz Yisrael. Right? One of the Tanoim would go along, when he's walking along the roads of Eretz Yisrael, he'd see rocks or other things which would cause people to stumble along the way. He would push it out of the way or would fill it in. He would tackle the roads in Eretz Yisrael. Why? He didn't want people to stub their toes, to trip, or to fall, or have something not nice happen to them, an accident happen to them in Eretz Yisrael, that they should have to speak badly about Eretz Yisrael. The other Tanoim, in the winter, they would go from the shade into the sun. And in the summer, they would go from the sun into the shade. So when they're learning, it wouldn't be disturbed, and they wouldn't think badly about Eretz Yisrael. They wouldn't think badly about Eretz Yisrael. Someone once told me, in the yeshiva, that from this Gemara, you could say that maybe it's a mitzvah to buy an air conditioner, right? Because therefore you can have the coolness in the summer and the heat in the winter that you need, that you won't be, Chas v'sholom, uncomfortable in Eretz Yisrael. It's a mitzvah to be comfortable in Eretz Yisrael, just like a sukkah, right? A sukkah is paying the guru. A sukkah, one mitzvah of sukkah is you have to make it like your home. Just like you have a nice couch and chairs and a table and everything's comfortable in the sukkah, in the house, you have to transfer that to your sukkah as well. Rosh Yeshiva said, as it's out in Steinberg, he said that it's true. If you need a fan in the sukkah, you need a fan in the sukkah, right? Some people I know, they put an air conditioner in the sukkah if that's what they need to be comfortable. It's all part of the mitzvah, right? So I was thinking that my father was Zohar, that he was able to come here, that he was able to come here to Eretz Yisrael, especially on Sukkot, more times than other times, specifically on Sukkot. That's a mitzvah that you do with your whole body, your whole group, right? That it's something which is an opportunity to have that other mitzvahs don't. Some tefillin is with the yad and the rosh, right? Tzitzis is with the upper part of the body, but to be encompassed within the mitzvah of a sukkah to be encompassed in the mitzvah of Eretz Yisrael, it's also something which is, shows that if my father was zoicha to this, I believe that he had a certain, whether it was conscious or unconscious, but the fact that he came, the fact that he was here, and the fact that he did that, that proves something. That proves something. We see from, in contrast, Avdil, but the Meraglim, they weren't zoicha to come in. If a person, right, is zoicha to something, you have to understand why. For example, Rashi brings down Kaleb. Well, the 12 spies were sent out, right? But of the 10 were Rishoyim, evil, and they were destroyed. Yeshua was one, and Kaleb was another that they miraculously survived. Moshe Rabbeinu had to change, he had to add a yud, the Osius of the same HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Yeshua's name. Kaleb, Rashi brings down, he went to the Kivri of the Tzaddikim, of Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, and Yaakov Avinu, and Elisha too. In Hebron, he went to pray in Hebron. I asked, and I haven't gotten an answer yet, how did Kaleb know to get to Hebron? How did he know? There wasn't the GPS over there. He didn't click it in and take, oh yeah, zoom down there. He didn't ask your local Kanani, stop a local Kanani policeman and say, well, I'm a spy from the Jewish people. I'd like to pray by my forefathers. You can direct me to Hebron there? How did he know to get there? I asked some Talmidei Chachamim, we agreed. Who knows? Are we going to say it was a miracle? So we'll say it's a miracle. But how does a miracle happen? Because the person wants something. That's it. A person wants to be in Eretz Yisrael. He wants to come, even if he can't be here all the time. He wants to be here, right? That's the way the person wants. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make it happen. Because the whole world is for the benefit of the person. That's what we said at the beginning. A person is brought into this world to gain mitzvahs, right? And to do the Ratzon Hashem. So anything that a person can do, if his Ratzon is really to do that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the creator of the whole world, is going to make sure that things happen. That's what the whole world is created for. But Rabbeinu Yonah says in the Mishnah Avos, right? Also, the way moment, Torah voted in the study. Rabbeinu Yonah explains there in the Mishnah that Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted that there be a place where these three things can exist. He created this world. There should be a place for Torah, Avoda, and Gilui Mitzvah. So that's why the world exists. That these things should be able to. There should be a place, a stage, so to speak, where these things can be done and accomplished, right? So as long as we're doing those things, the world has a purpose, right? So if that's the case, then it's a bracha that a person's in this world and can be certainly successful. So could be an economy. How did Kaleb get there? He knew that's what he had to do. He had to save himself, right? Just like Yeshua needed that extra yud in his name, and Moshe Rabbeinu knew that and gave him that yud that he should be saved. Kaleb needed that he go and pray by the Kevin Kavos. So whatever it was, however it could be, he found himself there, right? Because that's the there. Shalom Rolex or anything else. So the way the person wants to go, Hashem is going to make the world in a way that it's going to be accomplished. So, Baruch Hashem, it's a tremendous thing that we're here learning Torah in Yerushalayim, right? Even if you're just here for a few days, but we'll come again, Mitzvah Hashem, right? And the more we can do, the better we'll be, Mitzvah Hashem. And we should be zoicha that this oil of tzedek, Bini Beis HaMikdash, and we should be zoicha to Kiyas HaMeisim, Mitzvah Hashem, B'Korah.